Hi everyone and welcome back to the channel and welcome back to another video. Today's video is all about Bitcoin and what a day we're having for crypto and what a start to the week we've had for Bitcoin. What I want to do in today's video is go through the potential fractal that we've got playing out that we've been outlining over the past couple of weeks and months on Twitter, some key higher time frame levels for Bitcoin, the Bitcoin dominance and how this relates to the altcoins. Can we start to marry the picture together as to what we're seeing right now in the cryptocurrency market and some potential flash crashes that we need to be aware of, because as times get quite emotional for Bitcoin, whether we're greedy or fearful, the big candles come in. No doubt we get big corrections in either directions. Like here, we've got a big correction to the upside. Could we be preparing for some flash crashes to be able to benefit from on some altcoins? Potentially so. I do think that is coming. So I'm going to go through a couple of very key significant levels on the higher time frame that I think we need to be watching out for. But guys, if you like the video, give it a like. Of course, any comments, subscriptions, always appreciated. Let's get straight into the analysis. So as I mentioned, this was the scenario that we prepared for many months ago, just outlining what we thought was going to happen over the November-December period for Bitcoin and how we thought many people was not prepared for this. Many people was looking at these big green candles thinking, oh, we're going to go straight back down. However, we took the opposite view, knowing that we're approaching them higher time frame key levels with Fibonacci and Elliott wave targets now approaching. And we saw this as a very potential scenario for Bitcoin, and we can see it starting to transpire now. Now, it doesn't mean that it has to happen 100% because we know the market can do anything it wants at any time, but just removing this fractal right now and just taking a look at the low to high move that we've got at the minute from Bitcoin, from where the real impulse began down here, taking it to the current levels, and now just overlaying the higher time frame fractal here. Even if we was to get a bit of a push up higher, we're sort of saying that we'd potentially be looking for at least a correction back down to that 38,470 zone. That's what the fractals said in the past. It's what we've done in the past. It's a higher time frame, very key level here of significance. Not very often you do get breaks like this and you don't come back and test it. So I would like to see Bitcoin. I know everyone's really bullish right now, saying 40,000, 41,000, 42,000 Bitcoin. Wow, it breaks that level. But let's remain calm. Let's remain just sat back, relaxed approach. We know we've been looking for this move to the upside for a long time. We've been calling for the moves to $40,000 to $50,000 from them $15,000 regions. So it makes sense now to not get involved in the hype. Let's remain focused. Let's remain calm and level-headed. Could we potentially be expecting a very big pullback in the short term? Absolutely. Let's take a look at what percentage that pullback would be if we was to push up a little bit higher. Talking about a 10% pullback, and you can guarantee all the bears would come back out and say, oh look, this is exactly what's happening, we're going brand new lows now, 12k next, 10k next. The bears will come back out as they've done at every scenario on the way up on the way up for Bitcoin over this full parabolic move. However, I do think we've got a lot higher to go. So you can see if we was to get that pullback on Bitcoin, even from the current high to that 23% level to the downside, we'll just do that there again. Rough estimate, we're talking about approaching these 1.618 and 2.618 levels, even approaching that 3.618 level there up at around $52,000 region, which is when I believe the ETF is going to be approved for Bitcoin. We're going to get some really big bullish news narrative for Bitcoin up here before then once again another correction, and from there it's really anyone's guess. I would argue that we'd probably get at least a 20% correction. We see 20% corrections all the time in Bitcoin in uptrends. So I would argue we're approaching the price points in the chart where we're potentially looking for these 20-25% corrections. I think if an ETF approval got approved up here for Bitcoin, it would be the perfect time to lure in retail investors to come in and buy the high as they get wrecked again, potentially trying to long these high targets before a big 20% correction back down to that 40,000 key psychological level. And just taking a zoomed out, it really is after that anyone's guess as to what happens. I do believe Bitcoin dominance would maybe top around this level when we get to Bitcoin for about $50,000, and then I do believe potentially the altcoins will take over. With this potential drop and retrace back up here, would then be looking for the altcoins to take over. If in that moment we'd see the altcoins absolutely fly to the upside, we know we're potentially at a local market top, and we need to be expecting some more prolonged sustained period to the downside, or at least sideways for Bitcoin. So let's take a look at the online narratives right now for Bitcoin. All I've done is just type in Bitcoin, and you can see here all of the good news narratives. Crypto stock surge as Bitcoin hits fresh 2023 high. Bitcoin hits highest level in 18 months as investors gear up for an ETF approval. You see how they're focusing on the ETF approval. Bitcoin price surge. Bitcoin hits 40,000. Bitcoin accelerated growth. These are all the news narratives that come out as potentially we're starting to approach them levels where the retail investors soak themselves back into the market. Often you will get a couple of pushes to the upside after that. So if we was to see that move from 40,000, 38,000, all the way up to 50,000 with that ETF approval, that to me would be a mark to say everyone's back. Everyone is gaining confidence in the market. We need to be preparing for that major 20% correction in the market. These are the news narratives that come out up at local tops or near local tops. You don't see these new news narratives of bullish Bitcoin, why you should buy Bitcoin at 15,500. You know why? Because we know that the mainstream media do not allow people to be investing in the market when big players and big market participants are getting in themselves. So just look at all these news narratives. Bitcoin surge, Bitcoin price breaches 42,000 for the first time in nearly 2 years. Record high for gold as Bitcoin breaks 40,000. These are all the news narratives that come out to soak retail investors back into the market, get their attention before bullish drives to the upside to make them come in and buy up at around $50,000. I would imagine would be a key psychological level. The fractal matches up to it. We just need to remain cautious and know that these things happen in the mainstream media to bring the retail investors back to the market. But for us, who took the calm, relaxed approach to the market, stayed in the bad times, we know the times to be entering the market was down at these levels, long consolidation levels, accumulation phases, and now we're starting to see these parabolic moves to the upside. It's not as parabolic as it can get, of course. We've seen it go much more parabolic to the upside, and it could potentially even get itself to new all-time highs. We know that, but as the retail investors begin to pay a bit of attention now, it's not always a bad thing because then retail investors can provide the major moves to the upside for the big players and the market participants that enter down at these levels to sell some. So it would make sense for me to start to see some volatility return to the market as we see Bitcoin dominance now pushed to the upside and the narrative on the Bitcoin ETF approval. Could it be that the mainstream media is getting everyone's attention on Bitcoin for people to come in and buy these big green candles for Bitcoin as the potential return on investment and risk to reward turns more in the altcoin favors as we potentially get these retraces in the market where the altcoins prepare to take over and the Bitcoin dominance prepares to put in at least a local top where the altcoins go on a bit of a surge. So let's talk a little bit about Bitcoin dominance. We know we've been anticipating a rise in the dominance for Bitcoin since the earlier periods of this year. January, 16th of January, sort of really outlining why we thought the Bitcoin dominance was going to head towards that 56% level at least. Of course, it's taken a little bit longer to transpire, but these are never really to time period. I know I did say that the second half of the year we could potentially see this drop in dominance, and it's obviously taking a little bit longer, so we're not going to get everything 100% pinpoint nailed, but we're still sort of looking for that 56% to 60% level in the Bitcoin dominance to be breached before then we can turn our attention really closely onto the altcoins. Since we put that out back in January earlier this year, we can see Bitcoin dominance has risen around 32% on the chart, but realistically on the right hand side, it's gone from about 40% to around 54%. So whether you want to call it a 30% increase or a 15% increase, it just depends how you look at it. We'll call it a 15% increase for now, and still looking for that 56% level to be reached. And with these pumps now, we can do some more work on the Fibonacci to potentially give us some further drives and accelerated moves into the trend line to the upside. So let's take a look from current low to high. We'll take a look at the negative Fibonacci up there. talking around that 58% level, which coincidentally comes in at that big bearish breaker candle at this key level of significance. So one thing that I'm looking for Bitcoin to potentially take a lot of dominance as we work our way up to them, hopefully 52,000 levels, really work its way up here. Get to that 56, 58% level, this big bearish candle fill, and then we sort of look for the dominance to at least take a bit of a dip. It doesn't have to go to new lows, but of course it can. We've seen it go to new lows in the past, but we've also never experienced a time period where the dominance is so barely focused on a lot of stables in the market. So maybe a bit of a different aspect of the market we need to be preparing for this cycle, where potentially we don't go and set a new low in dominance. Maybe we just come back to some key levels of significance where we saw the big bullish breaker candles, head to the upside. That could be the scenario. We don't have to head to new lows for the dominance. We know it can happen, but these are all scenarios we need to be thinking of. I still am expecting a bit of a further drive in dominance to the upside, as the attention at the minute from the mainstream media is on Bitcoin, heading towards them 58% levels, hopefully aligning with them 50 to $52,000 levels, with potentially an ETF approval as the big players in the market take profits from Bitcoin and rotate it into the rest of the market as all of the attention is on Bitcoin. The altcoins really start to ramp up and people's attention turns to the altcoins just as the dominance is getting to a key level of area of support, and once again people are wrong-footed by the market, wrong-footed by the mainstream media, and wrong-footed, and 95% of people lose money once again in the market. So we've talked about the fractal, we've talked about Bitcoin and the higher time frame key levels, we've talked about the Bitcoin dominance. Overall, one thing we need to be doing right now is focusing on the higher time frame. Um, so psychologically, everyone will be looking at this level for Bitcoin and expecting it to be major resistance. However, we've talked about this in previous videos where you get order blocks like that, price often just shoots straight through it. Of course, we're sort of expecting on the lower time frame them 10 to 20% corrections, at least to $38,000. So I'm not saying bet your bottom dollar and go long here. That's probably, in my opinion, one of the worst moves you could make. I'm looking for that $38,000 region to get filled before a push into them higher levels. Talking about order blocks here that people are going to be looking at and potentially starting to short up at this level, which could add fuel to the fire for the extra move up to that $52,000 region with an ETF approval as the retail investors come back into the market, putting all their money buying spot Bitcoin, as we potentially see a rotation into the altcoins. And whether that's it and that's it done and that's the cycle over, we don't know. We can just anticipate that potentially this is a scenario we get. It doesn't have to be cycle over at that point. We can continue to the upside and have a couple of alt seasons within the full cycle to the upside. We've talked about that $147,000 region for a while for Bitcoin, potentially for a next cycle top. So it's not about sort of looking at these levels and thinking, wow, I'm going to sell my entire position. It's about risk management, because we are the people that stuck around at this level. We are the people that are able to benefit from these moves to the upside. We've invested at the altcoins for very, very low levels, and most of them are like 100 to 200% moves to the upside already. Obviously, a lot more volatility in the altcoins, and expect as the Bitcoin dominance potentially continues to rise with them 20% flash crashes, we could be expecting 30 and 40% flash crashes into our capitulation levels that we've been posted on the Patreon. So if you do want to get involved on the Patreon and see the entry and exit strategies, just go over there. Crypto Ryan 17 on Patreon. I will put the link in description below as well, where we cover requests, chart settings, stocks, educational content, altcoins, bitcoins, entry and exit strategies. Of course, it's all just what I'm doing, so you can get an insight to why and when I do things using different techniques and tips and tricks. But yeah, guys, of course, it's not financial advice from me today. I hope you've enjoyed the video. As always, we're just going to remain calm, relaxed, taking that sat back, relaxed approach, and just sitting back, relaxing, and letting the market do the work. So cheers, guys. If you like the video, again, give it a like. Of course, any comments, subscriptions, always appreciated. Cheers, guys, and I'll see you next time.